Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Loud and Proud Mamas. I'm your host, Justine.
And I'm your host, Laura.
And listeners, we are back in the studio, back with some fresh content. We are so sorry for the long hiatus. We are our first hiatus, actually, for Loud and Proud Mama, so I do hope you forgive us for that. But we are back with some fresh new content for you. Laura, how does it feel to be back?
Feels good. Yeah, I'm super happy to be doing this again. It's been quite some time. I feel like I need to stretch out the muscle, the podcasting muscle. We had pretty much one thing after the other. First, it started with a really big technical issue. We actually recorded this episode before, and when we listened back to it, there was something up with my mic where it sounded like I was in this giant auditorium with a huge echo. And it was pretty weird. Like we listened back to it, and we wanted to save your ears. It was not salvageable. So I needed Justine to come over here, fix my mic for me, because I am not so great with technology. And then there was a few sicknesses thrown in there, lost my voice for 2 weeks, some other scheduling conflicts. So yeah, after all that time, happy to be back. How you feeling, Justine?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good to be back. I think we got some funny stories to share with each other and share with the listeners. And it's been good. I'm happy to be back. So I thought it would be a fun idea to debut a new segment for our listeners, seeing as it's been so long since they've heard our voices. Laura, you know what new segment I'd like to debut?
What is it?
It is the segment appropriately titled Laura Was Right.
Ha 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 ha.
So, listeners, as you might have guessed from our dynamic from the last couple episodes, Laura is one of those moms who actually researches things and finds the best answer based on like a consensus of like medical and parenting advice. Is that more or less fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty spot on. We recognize that with all the research we do that we don't know the answers and we try things out, and if they don't work, we switch it up. But yeah, I like to look stuff up.
So, on that note, on looking stuff up, when Laura and I met at a mom group about a year ago, I noticed that your daughter communicated to you through sign language. She could show you that she wanted milk. She could show you like a couple other things. And I thought that was really cool because your daughter was under 12 months at
Yeah,
that point.
she must have been about 10 months.
Yeah. And so it was really cool that even though your daughter couldn't speak, she could communicate to you. And I was like, wow, I didn't know babies knew sign language. And you explained to me, yeah, it's really great because they get to this age developmentally where they are able to want to communicate to you, but their little mouths and their little tongue is not able to form sentences and words yet. But they are able to use their little fists their chubby little fists to do basic sign language. So it's a really good idea to do sign language so your kid can ask for milk or other things. And I was like, wow, that's a really good idea. And I filed that away in the memory bank, and then I never followed up on that. And so now, Laura, where am I in my life?
Where are you? Are you in the screaming for milk phase?
So when I have dinner with my otherwise adorable son, my son looks at me when he wants water to drink from his water cup, and he screams in my face, which is great. Love that. Can't get enough of that. And at the back of my head, I was like, Laura was right. Laura was right. This would have been a really good time for my son to do a really cute baby sign language to me. But instead, I didn't teach him sign language, and now he just screams in my face.
Oh no. Yeah, I have to say the communication phase, or the 12 months to 24 months, there's so much happening with communication. And my daughter will definitely do the screeching sometimes when she doesn't have the right word. But it's not too late to do some signs or some simple words. So when that happens, how do you respond?
I hold the water cup in front of him, just out of his reach, and I repeat, water, please. Water, please. Or, sometimes I'll switch it out and I say, oh, s'il vous plaît. Oh, s'il vous plaît. For our Anglophone listeners, that's water, please in French, formal French. Got to keep it formal with the children. No, s'il te plaît, between mother and child. We're trying to focus on the words now, but if I ever get pregnant again with a second child, I will definitely be following the advice from the segment Laura was right.
So what you're doing with water please right now is perfect. They say that that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So that's great. And for listeners who are curious, when you are teaching signs, you never show just the sign. You always say the word with it because that's the end goal. You don't want them to just talk in signs. You want them to eventually use the word. So you would sign, let's say water, but you would say water. And they say at that stage, you're really trying to do just one word at a time so that you're not piling on too much. And then once they have a word, that's when they suggest to start piggybacking other words on it. So, like if they, for example, know the word car, then you want to try and build on that. So, if you have a little toy car, you would say red car if the car is red. So that you, and then eventually, if they say red car, you'd say red car drives and then just keep piggybacking new words from there. That's kind of where we're at for our daughter. We're trying to get her to she can do sentences with broken up words, but they're not quite the
Wow.
fill in sentences yet. So it's like mummy come dodo um rather than saying like come mummy let's go to sleep, and she'll just
Yeah.
break up the words like that. But it's fun. It's really cool to see them popping up with new words each day.
That's really cool. When did the words like start coming faster and faster? Because with my son, we got mama down, we got dada down, we got the name of our dog down, which is a really funny one.
It's really
um,
cute when he says it. He says it
oh my
so
goodness.
sweetly.
And recently we've gotten the no, 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 no.
That's a good one. And I have to say, suggestion as what to teach next is definitely yes. Since my daughter has learned yes, or she goes, yeah, it is so helpful because we can ask her yes or no questions and she can actually give an answer. So that's been great. When did the words really take off? So our daughter was doing signs, I think, as of 8 months. 8 months she had, or 8 months to 1 year, she had about 5 signs that she would do well. Her favorites were milk, um, all done, and more, or encore. um, but then the words, I think by one she had maybe 15 words total. But
Wow.
then they kind of like plateaued a little bit.
Wow.
And it plateaued a little bit until maybe 14, 15 months, and then it took off. Every kid is so different, and really, unless there's kind of like a stagnation that you start being really concerned, what's great in Quebec is we have a lot of early intervention, which I'm really not worried for your son, but gonna say this anyways for the listeners out there. In Quebec, at the 18-month vaccine, you have the option of doing something called the ABCDR assessment. And what this is, it's an hour-long assessment with a CLSC nurse who is going to screen for a bunch of things. So this is
Nice.
somewhere that you can bring up if you're worried about communication, or for some kids, it's gross motor or fine motor skills. They assess for all those things. And if they see that they're not meeting certain milestones, they'll refer them to an agito, which is like an early intervention program, so that they can
Nice.
get the services early on before starting school, which I think is an amazing service that we have here.
That's so good. Wow. Excellent use of the tax dollars.
Yes, I agree.
That's very cool. So he is 14 months. So you said about 14, 15, the words start picking up.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
case for us, but I think every kid's different. I know 18
Every,
months is a big language jump for a lot of kids.
yeah.
So, and I think it depends too. Like kids with older siblings tend to talk faster earlier. I've also heard, and this might be a little controversial, so listeners, feel free to comment or message if you disagree with this. But there has been some, or I have heard that sometimes when a child is learning more than one language, they're
Yeah.
not delayed at all. So that's not what I'm saying, because learning multiple languages early on is actually fantastic for the brain. But I've heard that it sometimes just takes a tiny bit longer for the peak to come. So because they're processing more, it might be 1 or 2 months more before they start spilling
Wow.
out the words.
Can
Yeah,
I tell you a super cute story that just happened today?
please do.
It's about language, which is why I remembered it. So my husband and I'm an Anglophone and my husband's a Francophone. So obviously we want to do the French and English, but also my mother is Peruvian. And it was really important for her when I was growing up that I was fluent in Spanish. So she just drilled that into my head. And now with my son, her grandson, it is very important that he speaks Spanish as well. So we try to do like a 10 to 15-minute call every day. And she does not speak English to him. She can speak English very, very well. She's fluent, but she prefers to speak purely in Spanish to him. And today we were doing FaceTime and she was saying, ¿Dónde está tu nariz? ¿Dónde está tu nariz? Which is, where is your nose? Where is your nose? And she was miming touching your nose. ¿Dónde está tu nariz? ¿Dónde está tu nariz? And he was like,
Oh,
listeners, you can't see, but he was like touching his nose. And to be fair, he may have just been copying what she was doing on the screen, but still, that is how you learn.
it is, and he's definitely making the connection, so that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
she was evolving it. She was like, "Dónde está tu cabeza? ¿Dónde está tu boca?" And he was like following along, and like my mom is, she's a very enthusiastic person. So every time that he would do it properly, she would go, "Yeah, yeah, good job," and he gets excited at that. So it's good. It's good. So yeah, hopefully we're able to get that third language in.
So cute. So I have to share just something cute as well. Not a full cute story like you, but when we're talking about bilingualism, so my daughter is also going to hopefully be bilingual, French and English, and if we can add in Spanish too, fantastic. But for right now, her daycare is completely French, so she actually has more French words than English words. My favorite thing is when she combines them. She has the cutest little Fringlish. So some of my favorite combinations that she does is um, assis down. So instead of saying sit down, she tells us to assis down.
That's funny.
And then when she wants us to move something, she says bouge it, bouge it. So
That's
move in
good.
French and it. And I just think they're so cute, these little sayings.
Yeah.
But those are my two favorites.
It is really a blessing, I think. I learned French, well, still am learning French, but I started learning French at 30. And it's just, such a blessing for our children to like grow up and hearing both languages in their ears at such an early age. And,
Yeah,
just I think it just sets them up for a really great future.
absolutely. I agree.
So that was our brand new segment, listener, called Laura Was Right. Be on the lookout for future segments where I will be saying, basically giving your roses, giving where credit is due, that when Laura's right, she's right. And let's acknowledge it on the podcast. In this segment, listeners, teach your baby sign language. Otherwise, when they want milk, they'll communicate it by screaming at you. All right, listeners, we're going to move on to our next segment. We are going to be talking about a conundrum that I have in the meal prepping area. So, as we know, I like meal prepping. I think it's good to cook a really big batch of food and then freeze it and then have portions later on. But Laura, I got a question for you. When is too much? Too much.
I'd say if it doesn't fit in the freezer or if you can't eat it within 6 months, it might be too much.
So here's my problem, my dilemma. Laura, here is my dilemma. I want to make pâté. And I found a new recipe for pâté that uses a combination of ground pork shoulder and pork liver. And I'm really excited about this because I see it as the best of both worlds. One, we're trying to incorporate more organs into our diet. They're very nutritionally dense. They're relatively affordable with the prices of meat these days. And, it's good to incorporate traditional methods of cooking into modern life. And it's great because pork shoulder is very tasty. It gives a lot of that nice pork flavor that's very familiar because pork liver can be a little bit of a strong, distinctive flavor. So, in theory, this is good. The problem is it's a 1-to-4 ratio. So this recipe that I found uses 1 pound of pork liver and then 4 entire pounds of ground pork. So this will make a total of 5 pounds. This is going to make a total of 5 pounds of pâté. And Laura, it's a lot of pâté, girl.
And how often do you eat pâté?
I mean, I could be persuaded to eat more of it.
Now, could you not? Now, I've never made pâté before. I've never dealt with these types of, meat or organ stuff. Anywho, could you not just use 0.5? Like, could you not, just divide it in half and use, instead of 1 pound, do half a pound, and then instead of 4 pounds, do 2 pounds?
I could. It does require to, scale the recipe down because the recipe also uses eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're scaling down, it's always a little tricky to scale down eggs, just in terms of binding everything. I think that might be what we wind up doing, is just trying to scale it down for a first time. Because if you wind up with 5 pounds of pâté and you don't like the flavor or texture at the end, you got a problem.
Wow. Well, wishing you best of luck with your pâté adventures.
Would you be interested in partaking in 5 pounds of pâté? Would you like perhaps half a pound?
I would not like any pâté, thank you very much.
Really?
I appreciate the thought, but I'm not sure if you remember, we've had a discussion on the podcast before about how I'm a very basic bitch when it comes to my meats. I'm a very chicken, pork, beef kind of lady. I'm like chicken breast, maybe a chicken leg,
Okay, because I was gonna say, it's pork. It's definitely pork.
No, but I'm very much I need to dissociate with my meats, so I need them to be as normal. I think I don't know how to explain it, but mainstream meats as possible. And I don't like the pâté texture. There's something about it that I'm like, texture-wise, no.
You don't like that it spreads?
No.
Interesting.
No, and there's something, I don't know, something. Okay, maybe. So sorry, listeners, or if this turns you off, or so sorry, Justine, but I don't know if I spent too many times feeding cats the soft cat food.
Okay, yeah.
Which is the pure paste there and the smell of it. I think I just no thanks.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
No, I see where you're coming from. However, I do think I can make you something that you will really enjoy. Once a year, I make my own bacon. Bacon is made from pork belly. So I go to Costco, you buy 5 pounds of pork belly, comes in a big slab. It's about 25, it's under $30. It's $25, $27, so reasonable. You cure it for about a week. And then you throw it in the smoker. Type of cure that I do is a maple pepper. And then you smoke it till it's 145, so it's fully cooked. And then you let it rest in the fridge. And then I have a meat slicer. And I make these beautiful thin slices of bacon. And then because it's already cooked, you can just eat it like that. Or if you prefer your bacon to be crispy, you can fry it up on the pan. Get it nice and crispy to the texture of your liking. How about that?
That's definitely okay. That's not. I thought you were gonna talk to me about a bacon paste or something. And I was like, I don't know, Justine. I'm not a fan of the paste. Even the texture of like fish cakes or like things like that, there's something about that, like, I'm just not a fan of that texture.
Everyone's got their own preferences for texture. In terms of bacon paste in Polish culinary, we do have a bacon paste called
Oh,
smalek. I will not be making it for you, but yes, there is such a thing as bacon paste. I think we've talked a little bit off mic about Polish cooking. Yeah, about the sauerkraut and the Polish pickles.
yes. Yes. Which that I'd be down to try the sauerkraut. So there's definitely
Yeah.
things you can cook me.
Can I tell, we're off topic again, but that's okay, listeners. This is the content that you want. Can I tell you a funny culture clash immigrant coming to Canada story?
Yeah, go for it.
So my dad is Polish, and he came to Canada in the late 80s. And he was the first out of his family to come to Poland. Didn't really know a lot of, Canadian culture or really North American culture beyond what he saw growing up on television in Poland. So he goes to the grocery store, and it's his first time at a Canadian grocery store. And, he's stocking up on the essentials. He's getting bread, he's getting eggs, he's getting milk, etc. And he's like, all right, I'm going to get some pickles. And he goes to the aisle where, it says pickles. And he's like, wonderful, let's go in. Now, the thing about in Poland, in Polish culinary culture, pickle is a verb. It is something that you do to food. So, for example, you can have pickled beets, you can have pickled carrots, you can have pickled eggs, you can have pickled mushrooms. Like, pickle is a thing that you do. In North American culture, pickle is a noun. Pickle is a cucumber that has been preserved in vinegar. And so, picture this young immigrant Polish man in his early 20s going down, be like, oh, I'm going to get some pickled mushrooms. I'm going to get some pickled carrots. Yum, yum, yum. And he goes and turns into the aisle, and as far as the eye can see is just pickled cucumbers, just different brands of pickled cucumbers, sweet ones, dill ones. And it's all cucumber. And he was just in shock. He was like, what kind of nightmare is this? Like, where's my pickled beets? And that story always tickles me in terms of the differences that you expect to see at grocery stores.
Yes. Okay. So since you said your father's immigrant story or funny story, you made me think of one from mine, and I think it fits in because we were talking about languages, and it's a language thing.
Yes.
Um. So, please forgive me, Dad, for sharing this story, but it's really funny. So my dad also came into Canada in his like late teens, early 20s, and only spoke Spanish, didn't speak a word of English. He actually met my mom salsa dancing, and as he was like slowly learning English, him and his friends, and my mom, they went to McDonald's one day, and my dad wanted to order for himself, but it, sometimes in the switch from Spanish to English, some of the vowels they're pronounced differently. So my father proceeded to go to the counter and order a large cock.
Wow.
But he wanted a
Wow.
Coke. He wanted a Coke.
Wow.
And
Whom's amongst
instead,
us?
he asked for a large cock.
Did they say that this was not the appropriate venue, but maybe down the street? They...
I think one of the Anglophones jumped in and saved the day.
That's very sweet.
But yes, it's a funny story, even 30 plus years later.
I'm going to try that out with my husband the next time we're shopping at the grocery store, being like, all right, so we got the bread, we got the milk, we got the oranges. Are you in the mood for cock tonight, honey? Just a little. We could get like a 2-liter cock.
Okay, but you know what? He probably wouldn't be too phased because in French, a cock is just a rooster, right? He'd be like, are we going to try rooster tonight?
I'm going to try it, and then I'll report back and
Sounds good.
see how he reacts. So, as longtime listeners know, we have been recounting our fertility journey on this podcast. We have been doing the countdown to birth. We have done trimester 1, trimester 2, and for those who are able to count, it is now time to talk about trimester 3. So, trimester 3, Laura, at this point in time, we are giants. We are
Yes, this
giants.
is a big one. This is a big, big, big trimester.
And the waddling is incredibly pronounced. You slow down a lot. You're tired all the time. You have back pain all the time. You start seeing your doctor a lot.
And at this stage, my legs turned into tree stumps. I'm telling you, they were like, I don't even know. Like, they were logs. I had logs protruding from it was a giant belly and then logs. The only thing I could wear were Crocs. And I was also in it was end of May, so it was kind of summer, but if you are familiar with Crocs, they're wide, they're big guys. And I would take my feet out of my Crocs and I would have the little circles all over my feet. That's how
Oh my
swollen
goodness.
my feet were.
So, what was it, just like fluid, or like what happened to your
Yes,
feet?
it was edema, so it was swelling. It was just a lot of swelling to the
Oh my
point where
god.
my doctor, uh, we went to one of our appointments, and my doctor turned to my wife and said, "Catherine, you need to massage her feet every night. Massage her feet." And she did not massage my feet.
Catherine.
Yeah, yeah.
Catherine.
Still hold that against her 2 years later.
Catherine. Wow. And so, like, was it painful to walk?
Yes, it was pretty much, I was just in constant discomfort. Yeah. It
Oh.
was yeah. Though I have to say the swelling I got after birth was even worse. That was uncomfortable. It felt like my
Oh my
skin was
god.
gonna yeah. Anywho,
Oh my
we'll get
god.
there in a
We're
few
gonna get
episodes,
there.
listeners.
Wow. So for me, I told you how in trimester 2 he was a big boy already by trimester 2. By trimester 3, he was enormous. People would point at me on the street and comment, which, is what it is. But I started getting this new symptom called Braxton Hicks. And
Mm.
Braxton Hicks, for those who don't know, is a type of false labor pain. So basically, it'll feel like contractions deep in your belly. And you're like, oh God, is it time? Do I go to the hospital? No, you don't, because it's a trick. And you can get Braxton Hicks from a lot of different things. And let me regale you the list of things that would trigger Braxton Hicks for me: sitting down for too long, standing for too long, being in one position for too long, walking too long, cooking in the kitchen for too long, eating too much, not eating enough. It's just, like it just felt like I had like a mini dictator in my uterus. That is just every little thing I did. They're not like painful, but they are uncomfortable. And enough that whatever you're doing, you have to stop what you're doing and do something else in order to like stop the Braxton Hicks, which they do stop, which is how you know they're not real labor pains, because real labor pains, like, there's no stopping it. But
Hmm.
with Braxton Hicks, if you stop what you're doing and do something else and it goes away, then that's how you know it's a Braxton Hicks.
Yeah, I was always told a good way to see if it's actually labor, like let's say Braxton Hicks are lasting a little longer. A good way to see if
Mhm.
it's actually labor is to like take a bath, and if the bath makes it go away, it's not labor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I never really I got maybe a few Braxton Hicks, but definitely not like that. Nope,
Oh my
not at all.
God. It was nonstop. It was nonstop. Not fun. Definitely a very uncomfortable part. But I was pretty lucky that my last couple weeks of pregnancy, you know, we would see the doctor a lot, but not in an emergency setting, which I hear was not necessarily the case for you.
Well, I had one trip to the ER when I was 30 weeks pregnant. Well, actually, it turned out to be two trips, but I was having some kind of chest and back pain that would come in waves, and we weren't sure if it was labor and that like we thought maybe it could be a heartburn, but it was feeling different than normal. So we called the case room where at the hospital that we were going to deliver at, and they, told me to do a few things, and if it went away, then it should be okay. But it wasn't going away. So they said come on in and we'll stick you on a no stress test. So we went into the case room and they, stuck a monitor on the baby, and they saw that like there was no contractions happening, and that the baby was good, there was movement, there was a good heartbeat. So they gave me just some medication to stop the pain that I was having, but we were reassured that it wasn't anything too bad. But in hindsight, it was probably my body reacting because I was about to get very sick.
Oh,
So the next
okay.
day, I had my follow up or my regular appointment with my doctor. So we went in, and my they took my vitals as normal, but my heart rate was really high and it wasn't going down. And she was a little concerned with how high it was. So she sent me to get a blood test. It's called D dimers. I know for the non nurse people, they don't know what that means. I didn't either. But basically, it's to see something like for a worry that there might be a potential clot of some sort.
Okay.
Um, so she told us do the blood test right away and then don't go home because we live far. She said, hang around, just stick around.
Okay.
And so, we went to the mall, we did a few things, and then she it was actually her who called us and said, "Your results came in. They are high. I need you to go to the ER." So not
Okay.
upstairs to the case room, go to the ER, and they need they need to check to make sure you're not going to have a clot. So they need to do a
Okay.
CT scan, or it was some sort of scan. And anywho, so we ended up having to go to the ER, 30 weeks pregnant in the
Oh my
middle of
God.
the winter, or like it spring. So, I think it was maybe end of March, or my math is bad. Anywho, there was a lot of sick people there. And so they ended up swabbing me for COVID and for the influenza, and turns out I did have the influenza B. So I must have been, or I don't remember which one it was, but I had an influenza. And so we had to go in an isolation room, and
Wow.
they didn't let me eat. So we were there all day and they wouldn't let me eat because in case there was an embolism or something, in case I had to go for a surgery, they didn't want me eating.
Oh my
So at this
God.
point, like 30 weeks pregnant, haven't eaten all day. I'm sick. I'm throwing up. I'm like, I need to eat. And they're not letting me eat. I'm having it like, I'm clearly now starting to not feel well. And anywho, ended up there is a risk of doing a scan in pregnancy, but we talked with our doctor and she said she recommended us doing it just because, if there is a clot, then that could be very dangerous. So we did the scan and we were there probably until midnight, 1 a.m. And our appointment was at 9 in the morning. So we
Oh
had
my
literally
God.
been, it was like a full day thing. Anywho, um, long story short, I ended up, there was no clot. The scan was fine. We were able to go home. They gave me some special medication for vulnerable people when they get the flu. So I got that to help. And then then I got the flu real bad. And so I
Oh
had
wow.
about 2 weeks where I was just super sick. But everything ended up being okay, thankfully.
Oh wow.
Well, yeah, that was
Wow.
like the only like complication really I had, other than having a herniated disc and being immobile.
I don't know if you've told us about the herniated disc.
I'm not sure, but that I got that in my early second trimester. I was diagnosed with it because I had back pain from as of like 12 weeks, but it was so bad that I was having trouble with basic mobility.
Wow.
So I had to go see an osteo and physio like about once a week, once every 2 weeks for the entirety of my pregnancy, and I got put off work because of the herniated disc.
What is
And
a
it was
herniated disc?
it's like a slip disc. So in your spine,
Hmm.
like one of the discs, it's kind of misplaced, and that can happen from, if you pull something or if you move a certain way, or I guess in pregnancy it must have been like the way my uterus was positioned and the way I was carrying the weight. It must have just exerted too much pressure on my
Right,
spine,
right.
and sometimes it when it's in situations like pregnancy, it can go back to normal after the baby, and if not, it has to be surgically repaired. Thankfully, when I had the baby, it did go back.
Wow.
Yeah, but it made it really hard to do like basically anything, and sitting hurt, standing hurt, walking hurt.
Oh my
So,
God.
yeah, it was not a fun time.
Your
But
pregnancy
I'm
sounds
still so grateful for it.
your pregnancy sounds like you worked a lot harder than me.
There was some hard work. There was some hard work, yeah. I've heard that out of the four things that come with birth, you like don't, or like let's throw in five. You don't get to have all of them easy. So there's conception,
Mhm.
there's the pregnancy, there's the
Mhm.
birth,
Mhm.
there's the postpartum, and there's breastfeeding. We can kind of throw in breastfeeding or pumping. Like some people have a really hard journey with that. And then I was
Uh-huh.
going to say like the infant sleep, like the newborn phase. So six. Like out of those, I feel like you can't have all of those easy. So like some people have a super easy pregnancy, but then a rough postpartum. Some people have super easy time conceiving, but then a really hard time with pregnancy, and then a really good birth but really bad postpartum. Like there, I feel like it's different for everyone. You don't usually get all six to be super easy.
When we get to the breastfeeding episode, I'll talk about my experience with that. As a little spoiler for that one, we decided to pump my son from day three. Decided to be a little crocodile, and he would bite me so hard that the experience was really unpleasant.
Yeah, of
But
course.
breastfeeding was still really important, so we did pumping. And I'll talk in detail about how I did that. But yeah, we did pumping for about 9 months.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, like for us, the conception was like relatively easy. The pregnancy, I would say maybe like a 7 out of 10. It
Mhm.
was definitely uncomfortable for me.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you get to the last couple of weeks and you're like, this baby's got to come out, man. This
yeah.
baby, I want this baby out. Yeah. What else can I say? Oh, so yeah, on the topic of my baby being a giant fetus. So it was pretty early on that we started having the conversation with our OBGYN about what the birth plan was. And she was like, all right, so like, how do you feel about things? Do you want to do a natural birth? Do you want to do like, are you open to a C-section? Like, just like tell me your general thoughts. And I said, well, I'd really prefer pain medication. For my first birth, I'm a little bit nervous about doing it natural. And, like if a C-section has to happen, it happens, but I would prefer not. And she was like, got it. And she wrote it down in her little notepad. And so the weeks go on, and the boy gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And one appointment, she's measuring my belly. And I was due for an ultrasound close to the end. I think something at like 37 weeks or something like that. This was like week 33, week 34, something like that. And she's looking at me, she's looking at my belly, she's measuring it, and she's like, when's that ultrasound appointment? And I was like, oh, it's in like 10 days or something like that. And she said, no, no, I'm making some calls. That appointment's tomorrow, which is great. When you get a doctor like that, she's like, I'm going to
Yeah,
make
that's
some
great.
calls. So it's true. She made some calls. 40 minutes later, I had that appointment tomorrow. So I go to the appointment. The technician there, I think we've said it before, the person who does the ultrasound is not a doctor. Or, well, I don't know if I should say the person who does the ultrasound is not the person who's going to tell you the medical results from that ultrasound.
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
Is that the respectful way to say that?
I believe so.
Okay. So, there's no point in asking the person who's doing the ultrasound, oh, what do you think? Because they will not tell you anything.
Mm-hmm.
So we do the ultrasound, we wait for the results, we talk to my doctor, my OBGYN, we go back to see her. Kind of a pain in the ass because she's all the way like 40 minutes away. And she's like, okay, here's the situation. He's big and he's getting bigger. I did so many diabetes tests. I didn't have diabetes, but they kept freaking testing me for diabetes.
Oh, that's the worst test, too.
I hated that test.
Yeah. It made me throw up. Anywho, continue.
So the OBGYN was like, he's big and he's getting bigger. And if you want to deliver naturally, it's definitely possible. And we'll be happy to help you through it however we can. However, there is a possibility that if you go through a natural birth, he might get stuck with his big football linebacker shoulders in your vaginal canal. And if that happens, then it becomes an emergency C-section. And, that's when it gets scary because they can't breathe in the canal. Mm-hmm. And she said, it's my recommendation that we induce you. So that way we can we can have you there. And, if things happen, we'll be on site. And so I talked about it with my husband. And the induction sounded like a good reason for a lot of reasons. One, it would give us like a very firm start, more or less, to when the baby would be coming out. Because it was the first one, it felt reassuring that it felt like we had a plan going in. Yeah, also with my giant fetus and his little linebacker shoulders, we were scared of having an emergency C-section where things would be more tense than usual. So we agreed to the induction. At the time, I didn't do a lot of research as to what the statistics of induction are and how they typically end up. For listeners who are wondering what I mean, a lot of inductions can lead to complications, which can end in C-sections, which again is, it's not a bad thing to have a C-section. Any pregnancy that mama and baby are good in the end is a good birth.
Yes, but so I'm going to be devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say you can be grateful that you and your baby are safe, but you can also be upset with how your birth experience is. And you can also grieve it. And you can also hold that space. So often when, the reason I made a face when Justine said that, everyone, because I hear it all the time. And it's true. And if that's what gives you comfort to say, then by all means say it. But I also want to validate to people who didn't have the birth that they wanted that, it's okay to grieve it. It's okay to be upset. And you can be grateful for your baby and your health while also feeling sad and disappointed that it didn't happen the way you wanted it to. So just putting that out there.
Yeah. Two things can exist at the same time.
Two things can exist. Exactly.
Yes. We'll talk about my birth experience in the next episode. But yeah, that was basically the conversation I had with my OBGYN, was that induction would be the best idea, or the idea that we were most comfortable with, because we wanted to avoid an emergency C-section. I think we'll talk about the induction because that'll fall more under the birth episode.
Yeah, I think so. But that was the plan, eh? You made that plan during the 3rd trimester, and
that we would do the induction. Yeah, and that was the last time before I gave birth that I saw my OBGYN.
So they booked you in?
So you sign a paper that says your OBGYN is going to do her best to be the delivering doctor, but if not, you may be with someone else, and that person might also be a man. And then you sign a little paper that says, I consent to this. And I signed that little paper, and she said, I'm going to do my best to be there, but if I'm not there, I'm so sorry. You're actually going to be with this doctor who delivered my baby, which was actually pretty cool. They had done their medical school together. So the doctor who wound up being my delivery doctor also delivered my OBGYN's baby, which is
very cool.
A very small circle.
Yeah.
But yes, What were the last couple weeks for you?
They were pretty good, I think, overall. We did some prep, but same we there was a lot in hindsight that I didn't learn about birth. There's a lot of things I wish I could have educated myself a little bit better. We took one class on how to deal with pain during labor, and this was actually a very cool class. It was in person with your partner, and they taught you all kinds of different techniques and whatnot. But it was very French, and so I think my partner missed a lot of it, and in birth I was not able to recall any of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was a very cool class to take, and we did some birth prep classes online, some parenting prep classes online. So I did that, and I had this tradition to prepare for birth, but it was more just what I enjoyed doing. But because I had the severe back pain, I would take a warm bath every night. And
Mm-hmm.
I would have my pickles and my popcorn because those were my two cravings, and my soda water. And I would take my bath and I'd watch a YouTube birth story. So
Nice.
I would it helped me learn about different stories and see a thing. One thing though that I did was I skipped all the C-section stories, which I wish I hadn't done. Spoiler alert, listeners, but you'll find out more in our birth episode. But yeah, so I really thought I was going to have a natural birth. I tried to do some prep. I didn't do enough, but I'm from a very medical family. So there's a lot of nurses in my family. There's a lot, So right away, everyone was like, "You're getting the epidural. You're getting the epidural." So I was just like, "I guess I'm getting the epidural." Anyhow, again, more in the next episode. But yeah, so the last few weeks were pretty much just doctor's appointments. I was lucky my wife was off work at this time, so she was able to drive me everywhere, which was great. Doctor's appointments, physio appointments, osteo appointments, doing some nesting. We had our baby shower, which was amazing. That was really fun. Maybe we'll talk about those on another episode. And yeah, there was just a lot of that. So yeah, and it was becoming nice weather, so I was trying to be outside more and keeping busy. But at this point, I was so ready for the baby to come. Every day I
Yeah.
was like, "Is it today? Is it today?" Like for 3 weeks before the due date, I was just like, "I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get down to the last couple of weeks and you're like, I'm just gonna pop this baby out myself.
Yep. Yep.
One last note before we wrap up this segment. You talked about you going to the hospital. I think I said in the second trimester episode that the way it worked for our hospital was that they really wanted to keep you out of the emergency room. So your OBGYN, first of all, gives you this huge book, which is like the Quebec baby book, and it has 99% of all the questions you commonly ask. And then after that, you get a special phone number that goes directly to the maternity ward in the hospital that we were going to. You can call them, the nurse will answer your questions. If she can't answer them, she gets the doctor for you, and the doctor does the call of whether or not you need to come in or not. I would call this line so much because my son would just like not kick. And that's a concern that if you go like more than like a set amount of hours, like I think it's like 3 or 5 hours or something like that, don't feel like kick, especially as you get towards the end, that's a sign of concern. So I was calling this line nonstop and they'd be like, okay, did you like change positions? Did you eat a fruit? Did you eat a chocolate? Did you like do this? Did you do that? They were just so helpful. And I ate so much chocolate and so much fruit, and he would perk right back up and start kicking. And just a little memory that triggered for me. But yeah, luckily we didn't have to go to the hospital other than that one time where we didn't know about the special line. So we went straight there. And then they were like, you didn't give us a call.
No, that can definitely be scary, but I'm glad that a little bit of chocolate perked him up.
Yes, yes. Last bit of chocolate he'll ever have. So, Aura,
Yes,
we've been hanging out lately.
we have. It has been great. I have learned a lot of new things, listeners. I have to say, Justine is a lot of fun to hang out with.
Thank you. That's very nice to say. So let's see, what we've done. We've sharpened your knives.
We have. They work great now, by the way.
We've made some bread.
We have. We made two kinds. We made a whole wheat bread. And we also made a delicious raisin bread that my wife and baby are obsessed with.
Amazing. We'll make it again. We made pretzels.
We did, and they are so cute. They turned out so well. I was really impressed with us.
Aw. And then we've done some beginner sewing projects.
We have. You taught me how to use my mini sewing machine, and we made a cute little pillow for my baby's dolls. I keep calling her a baby. She's not a baby anymore. For my daughter's dolls.
I still call my son my little baby.
He's
And
still a baby.
sometimes to frustrate him, I carry him like in my arms,
Aw.
lying horizontal in my arms, and I rock him like this, and he gets so mad. He's like, absolutely not. I am not a little baby. I'm now going to run around. So I'm glad you've been having fun hanging out.
Yeah, it's been great. So Justine's a little worried that maybe she's a little bossy when we hang out, but let me tell you, it's great for me and my ADHD. I love it. She just tells me what we're baking bread and she keeps me on track. She's like, okay, add this now. Okay, Laura, have a cup of milk. And then if I start getting distracted, she'd be like, is the timer on? We're putting the timer on for 2 minutes. And then next step. And it's great. Like, I love it. I tell her it's not bossiness, it's leadership tendency.
I'll remind that to you once I start to get on your nerves.
I'm not too worried.
I'm glad. I'm glad. We have a couple more hangouts planned. We have a
We
ravioli
do.
double date planned and
Yes, that's
potentially
gonna
a
be great.
Spanish book club.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So, in the future, listeners, you can get all of the behind the scenes scoop of this podcast and what we're up to when we're not on the mic. And so, wrapping it up, Laura, my goodness, I think we're coming into spring. Do you think we're coming to spring?
I feel like I need to knock on wood right now because I don't want you to jinx this.
Uh-oh.
Because it has finally been somewhat mildish outside
Yes.
and it has been so needed. And more than that, what I'm so grateful with is we just had our time change. So now it's going to be 6:30 in the evening and the sun will only begin to set. And what a difference I find that makes.
Yeah, my husband's seasonal affective depression was just, I was gonna say off the charts, but no, it was the opposite of off the charts. It was very low on the charts today.
Yes.
He went outside today and it was the same thing. He's like, I left the house at 5 and the sun was up.
It's great. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, yes, springtime is here. It was a tough winter, I will say. Even as a winter lover, I will say it was
Yeah,
a tough winter.
it really was. It really was this year.
Yeah, but we're coming to the end, listeners, and the
We
sun is
are.
back.
And on that note, I think we are at the end of our episode tonight. Thank you so much for bearing with our nice long episode. We have missed you all so much, and we're happy to be recording again.
Thanks so much for listening. Have a great rest of your night.